Welcome to the Lost in History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. A 1945 photograph shows the transport of the bomb, nicknamed Fat Man, later taken to Nagasaki during World War II. The image documents the military logistics that preceded the weapon's deployment. Downtown Rotterdam appears almost completely destroyed after the May 14, 1940 air raid during Germany's invasion of the Netherlands in World War II. The attack left much of the center in ruins and forced thousands to leave their homes. In the early 1940s, Japanese-American families were photographed at an internment camp in the Pacific Northwest after the United States entered World War II. Thousands of people of Japanese descent were removed from their homes and forced to live in makeshift facilities, often in remote areas. Juliane Koepcke, then 17, survived a plane crash in 1971 when the aircraft was struck by lightning and she fell approximately 3 kilometers, about 1.9 miles, while still strapped to her seat. In 1945, a man walks down a carefully swept street amid the ruins of a German city devastated at the end of World War II. The contrast between the destroyed buildings and the clean pavement shows an attempt to regain order and dignity amid collapse. In 1969, director Roman Polanski was photographed kneeling at the door of his Los Angeles home, which had become the site of one of the era's most notorious crimes. Marks left by the perpetrators remained at the entrance, tied to the case that involved the death of his wife, actress Sharon Tate, and others. A circus performer appears inside a car aquarium surrounded by crocodiles in Berlin in 1933, part of an act designed to shock and fascinate the audience. The vehicle was adapted with transparent walls and water, so viewers could watch the unusual act up close. A woman rides an alligator inside the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum in the 1930s, an unusual attraction staged as entertainment. Opened in 1923, the stadium hosted major sporting and cultural events and occasionally quirky shows to amuse the crowd. Construction workers pose atop the North Tower of the World Trade Center in 1973, the year it was officially completed in New York. The scene shows crews balanced on steel at great height, reflecting the courage and skill needed to raise one of the world's tallest buildings at the time. Eunice Padfield performs before a crowd in Pueblo, Colorado during July 4th celebrations in 1905, diving acrobatically from an elevated platform while mounted on her horse. In the 1980s, Osama bin Laden was photographed in Afghanistan during his involvement with resistance activities against the Soviet military presence. He was part of a movement that brought together local fighters and foreign volunteers backed by various countries during the Cold War. Women were photographed in 1979, marching in Tehran against the law that made the veil mandatory after the Islamic Revolution, led by Ruhollah Khomeini. The image shows thousands mobilized in the streets during the first months of the new government. Captain Lewis Nixon of Easy Company was photographed the morning after victory in Europe Day on May 8, 1945, holding bottles taken from Hermann Göring's residence. The scene shows a rare relaxed moment after years of heavy fighting as soldiers celebrated the war's end in Europe. At Circus Bygningen in Copenhagen, bears were shown riding a small motor scooter as part of a Circus Schumann act in the late 1950s. Shows with trained animals were common then and drew big crowds who saw them as feats of skill and unusual entertainment. Babe Ruth is photographed unconscious after hitting a wall while chasing a fly ball on July 5, 1924, during a baseball game. The New York Yankees star was out for about 5 minutes, alarming the crowd. The wings of the giant aircraft, known as the Spruce Goose, were moved from the Hughes Aircraft Plant in Culver City to Long Beach on June 11, 1946, in an operation notable for its size and logistical complexity. A Swedish CH-46 Sea Knight helicopter is photographed carrying a dinosaur-shaped playground slide in 1984. A curious scene mixing military hardware with everyday city life. Using the aircraft to move the playground piece drew attention to the contrast between the rugged machine and the colorful toy in the air. During the German occupation of France, the Louvre Museum in Paris remained largely empty because its main works had been removed and hidden for safekeeping. Galleries that once welcomed thousands fell silent, with paintings and sculptures replaced by blank spaces or empty frames. The Apollo 12 crew, astronauts Charles Pete Conrad, Richard F. Gordon, and Alan L. Bean, was photographed in 1969 as the second team to land and walk on the moon. The launch took place in November, a few months after Apollo 11's milestone, cementing America's presence in space. The first Boeing 747 was unveiled to the public at the company's assembly plant in Everett, Washington on September 30, 1968, marking a historic moment in commercial aviation. A Sami man holds the reins of his white reindeer in Kautokeino, northern Norway, in the 1910s, wearing sunglasses and smoking in a striking scene. The Sami people, traditionally tied to reindeer herding, lived in Arctic areas of Scandinavia and kept ancestral practices suited to the harsh climate. Frederick Fleet, a 24-year-old lookout on the Titanic, was photographed in 1912 shortly after he became the first to spot the iceberg that would lead to the ship's sinking. People were photographed in 1969, gathered in front of an appliance store in Buenos Aires, watching the moon landing broadcast. The event, followed across the world, marked one of the most significant moments in space exploration. U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson was photographed in 1968, listening to a recording sent from Vietnam by his son-in-law, Captain Chuck Robb. The image captures a personal moment amid White House duties during a time of intense political and military tension. A migrant farm worker travels with his wife and 10 children in search of a better life, leaving Oklahoma for California in 1936 during the Great Depression. The Panama Canal is shown operating in 1914, the year of its official opening after one of the early 20th century's most ambitious engineering projects. The man-made link between the Atlantic and Pacific drastically cut route times and reshaped global trade. Cars are parked beneath the Eiffel Tower in 1970, when the space under the monument still served as public parking. The scene feels odd today, since the area is now pedestrian only and protected by preservation and security measures. Protesters linked to the SED, Socialist Unity Party of Germany, appear in Berlin during the 1948 airlift, holding signs and organizing demonstrations against Western operations. Actress Brigitte Helm is seen resting and cooling off between takes of Fritz Lang's Metropolis in 1927, a landmark of German expressionist cinema. Helm played Maria and her mechanical double, the Robot, a role that required long hours in heavy costumes and hot sets under intense lights. A New York policeman was photographed during a 1923 demonstration of a bullet-resistant vest, as personal protection technology was beginning to gain ground in law enforcement. In Los Angeles' Chinatown, a man pulls a rickshaw carrying a woman seated comfortably in a scene typical of the 1940s. This Asian origin transport was used in a few neighborhoods to serve visitors and tourists seeking different cultural experiences. Clothing adapted for air raid shelters is shown in London in 1939, as Britons prepared for expected bombings at the start of World War II. The outfits were designed for practicality and comfort, so people could spend long periods underground. Swedish engineer Niels Bohlin of Volvo introduced the modern three-point seat belt in 1959, revolutionizing automotive safety. Unlike earlier two-strap designs, his invention protected both the chest and the waist of the passenger. On March 16, 1960, Republic Aviation Corporation unveiled a prototype space suit designed for future moon missions. It was part of a series of experiments during the space race, as companies and agencies sought ways to protect astronauts in extreme environments. A military helicopter flies near the Chernobyl nuclear plant, releasing a sticky agent designed to bind radioactive particles to the ground and reduce their spread in the air. In the 1960s, AT&T's Bell Labs introduced the picture phone, one of the first communication systems that let people talk while seeing each other in real time on a screen. In 1928, at the Zeppelin Works in Friedrichshafen, German engineers and workers finished building the LZ 127 Graf Zeppelin, one of history's most famous airships. The huge craft measured about 236 meters long, roughly 774 feet, and represented the height of aeronautical engineering at the time. The Ohio State Building, constructed for the Panama Pacific Exposition in San Francisco, was dismantled and moved by barge to Coyote Point in 1916 after the World's Fair ended. Held in 1915, the exposition celebrated the opening of the Panama Canal and the city's rebirth after the 1906 earthquake. The 1949 DAF Domburg diesel, built in the Netherlands, was documented as a rare example of design that gave mechanics special consideration. The vehicle featured innovative solutions for maintenance and operation, setting it apart from conventional models of its time. Behind the scenes of Star Wars, crew members and actors prepared one of the scenes that would become modern cinema icons. In 1977, the year the first film premiered, George Lucas led a bold production combining practical effects, detailed sets, and filming innovations. President John F. Kennedy was photographed leaning over his desk in the Oval Office on February 11, 1961, in an image later known as the Loneliest Job. The photo conveys the weight of responsibility on one of the youngest leaders in U.S. history, just weeks after taking office. Sean Connery and Brigitte Bardot met for the first time in Deauville, France, in 1968, shortly before filming the European Western Shalako. The meeting brought together two of the era's biggest film icons: Connery, already famous worldwide as James Bond, and Bardot, a symbol of French cinema and an international star. Italian artist Dario Campanile redesigned Paramount Pictures' famous logo in 1986. He gave the iconic star-ringed mountain a more modern, detailed look while preserving the studio's tradition. A labeling machine operating at Heinz's original factory in Pittsburgh is shown in 1901, illustrating industrialization in the food sector. The equipment applied labels to bottles and jars uniformly, speeding a process once done by hand. A set of 62,500 punch cards was needed to store 4.5 megabytes of data, illustrating the physical scale of computing at the dawn of the digital era. Each card held small holes that represented instructions or binary data, and together they powered processing on machines of the period. Inventor Ulysses Sanabria introduced a device in 1961 nicknamed the Three-Eyed TV Monster, capable of showing simultaneous broadcasts on 2 or even 3 screens. The creation reflected the era's excitement with television, already the main medium at home. A group of young French and German women was photographed in 1961 during a training session at the Trans World Airlines Flight Attendant School in Kansas City, Missouri. The session covered posture and presentation techniques, an essential part of the training required for international flights. U.S. President Jimmy Carter was photographed in 1977 next to Olusegun Obasanjo, Nigeria's leader at the time, during an official meeting. The visit underscored efforts to strengthen ties between the two countries on diplomatic, economic, and energy issues. Engineers and architects were photographed in 1982, working at large drafting tables before AutoCAD was widely adopted. The image shows technical projects being created by hand, with rulers, triangles, and scale rulers. A drive-in restaurant in Portland, Oregon, was photographed around 1958, reflecting the height of post-war American car culture. Car-side service became popular with young people and families and turned into a symbol of the modern lifestyle of the era. Sophia Loren was photographed in 1955 during the Cannes Film Festival, when her international career was starting to surge. Her presence at the event symbolized the rise of Italian cinema on the world stage. A couple was photographed in New York around 1923 riding together on an autoped, considered one of the first motorized scooters, invented in 1915. The compact, practical vehicle was created as an urban transport alternative during a time of rapid city modernization. A chess tournament held in Moscow in 1978 brought together major figures in the sport at one of its most traditional hubs. The event reflected the strong Soviet tradition of developing and promoting chess as a cultural and intellectual symbol. Sleeping berths on KLM aircraft were documented in the 1960s, when long-haul comfort was a major draw for international travelers. The space allowed customers to rest in compartments more spacious than standard seats. A 1956 photo shows the Aerotrain, a futuristic model developed by General Motors to modernize U.S. rail travel. Inspired by car and airplane design, the train had a sleek, lightweight look, with cars adapted from bus bodies. At a 1940s beauty school, students practiced hairdressing, skincare, and personal care techniques in a hands-on setting. The era saw the profession rise, driven by the expanding cosmetics industry and growing everyday focus on appearance. In April 1912, a crowd gathered in Paris to watch a solar eclipse, turning streets and squares into shared viewing spots. The astronomical event stirred widespread curiosity, and newspapers listed the best times and places to see it. In a 1970s dressing room, the members of KISS applied their signature makeup before going on stage. Each member used a distinct look, from mystical to over-the-top, creating a unique visual identity in rock. Ronald Reagan appears traveling casually in sweatpants, a contrast to the traditionally formal image of U.S. presidents. The scene shows a relaxed, simple moment amid official duties and travel. A group of young people in a Stetson University dorm in Florida is seen during a relaxed moment at the start of the 20th century. Around 1900, they sit around a table playing cards while drinking and smoking, reflecting student life of the time. U.S. President Richard Nixon took part in a ceremony at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington on February 12, 1974, to honor Abraham Lincoln's birthday. Actress Sigourney Weaver was photographed at the tail of the Pup Stand in Los Angeles in 1983, one of California pop culture's quirkier landmarks. Opened in the 1940s, it was famous for its giant hot dog shape and became a must-stop for locals and celebrities. Ozzy Osbourne was photographed in 1977 while still fronting Black Sabbath, cementing his image as a heavy metal icon. By then, the British band had released genre-defining albums like Paranoid and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, shaping its dark, heavy sound. During an official banquet in Beijing, U.S. President Richard Nixon was photographed using chopsticks beside Premier Zhou Enlai on February 26, 1972. The dinner was part of Nixon's historic visit to China, a key step in restoring relations after decades apart. Shoppers browsed the jewelry and perfume department of Ilum in Copenhagen in 1904, illustrating the rise of urban consumption in the early 20th century. Founded in the 19th century, the store was already among Denmark's most elegant, offering luxury goods that signaled social status. Young inventor H. Day, then 18, was photographed in 1922, wearing headphones connected to a small radio hidden under his top hat. The gadget was one of many creative experiments of the time, as radio spread quickly and inspired hobbyists to find new ways to use it. Actress Susan Dey, who rose to fame playing Laurie Partridge on The Partridge Family, was photographed around 1970 as the show debuted and quickly became a cultural hit. In London during World War II rationing, a beautician painted a client's legs in 1941 to simulate stockings. Nylon and silk were scarce because those materials went to the war effort, leading many women to seek creative alternatives. On a street in City Island, the Bronx, a woman makes a call at a public phone in the 1980s, a typical urban scene before cell phones became widespread. Coin or card phones were common across neighborhoods and were essential to daily communication. Amid the cobblestone streets of Stockholm's Old Town, a Volvo sits parked in the 1960s, blending tradition and modernity. The neighborhood, known as Gamla stan, preserved medieval-era buildings with colorful facades and narrow alleys. Actress Catherine O'Hara was photographed in the mid-1970s as she began building her career as a comedian and writer on the Canadian show Second City Television, SCTV. Passengers on the Cunard Line ocean liner, Franconia, are shown working out in the ship's gym in 1912, a space considered modern for the time. The Franconia was a point of pride in the British fleet, offering luxury and amenities that marked the golden age of sea travel. A 1921 advertisement urges the public to eat a dish of ice cream every day, reflecting the era's upbeat, direct ad style. Ice cream, popular in the United States since the 19th century, was promoted not only as dessert, but also as an energizing, healthy food. Abby Stockton, known as the Queen of Muscle Beach, performs a split snatch with 135 pounds in Santa Monica, California, in the 1940s, while weighing about 115 to 120 pounds herself. A pioneer in women's strength sports, Stockton defied the era's norms by showing strength, technique, and poise in public performances. Elvis Presley receives care at a hospital after breaking his little finger during a casual football game in 1960, accompanied by his girlfriend, Anita Wood, and friends who were playing with him. At Southam Park Zoo in England, a chimpanzee is photographed feeding a leopard cub with a bottle in 1971, a scene that drew attention for its tenderness and novelty. French professional wrestler Maurice Tillau poses with cartoonist William Steig in 1937, in a photo later linked to the creation of Shrek. Known in the ring as the French Angel, Tilla drew attention for his striking features caused by a medical condition. Actress Markie Post was photographed in the 1980s when she became very popular on American television. Known for playing Christine Sullivan on Night Court, she became one of the era's best-known comedy stars. In March 1949, Los Angeles motorcycle police line up alongside their Harley-Davidsons for an official inspection. The scene shows dozens of uniformed officers with the sturdy bikes that were already symbols of reliability and strength in U.S. policing. A Dairy Queen on the Dixie Highway was photographed in 1970, showing the classic roadside look that defined American car culture. President Dwight D. Eisenhower pauses for the camera while working on a 1954 painting of his daughter-in-law Barbara and grandchildren David, Anne, and Susan. Beyond his military and political career, Eisenhower took up painting after World War II to unwind from public life. Dr. Seuss, the pen name of Theodore Seuss Geisel, is shown drawing the Grinch in 1975, more than a decade after the success of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, published in 1957. The grumpy, small-hearted character had become one of his most famous, already adapted into a 1966 TV special. A Most Beautiful Legs contest is held in Paris in 1950, drawing contestants and curious onlookers to a fashion and entertainment staple of the time. Such competitions were popular post-war, as the city aimed to reaffirm its image as a capital of elegance and charm. Barbara Eden was photographed in the 1960s when she gained international fame playing Jeannie on the TV series I Dream of Jeannie. Debuting in 1965, the show quickly won audiences with light humor and the chemistry between Eden and Larry Hagman, who played astronaut Tony Nelson. Stephen Fry and Rowan Atkinson are seen eating hard-boiled eggs in a photo from the late 1970s, when both were beginning to stand out in British comedy. Two young Italians pose with long strips of fresh pasta set out to dry in 1928, illustrating the country's artisanal food tradition. Rolling and hanging pasta was common in many households, especially in regions where home production was part of daily life. Children are photographed leaving school in Dunklin County, Missouri, in July 1942 during World War II. The scene shows boys and girls walking along rural roads after class, reflecting the simple life of the area's farming communities. Sean Connery signs a coconut for a young fan during the filming of Dr. No in Jamaica in 1961, a relaxed backstage moment from the first official James Bond production. A competitor balances on a pole during the World Pole Sitting Championship in Rolofarensveen, the Netherlands, on August 9, 1971. The contest challenged participants to stay atop a pole as long as possible, requiring physical and mental endurance. A McDonald's employee is pictured on the job in the 1980s, when the chain was cementing its global presence and had already become synonymous with fast food in many countries.